Hello guys and welcome to my week 8 prediction video. Without any further screwing around, let's get to picking these games. Starting off, we have Ravens Browns. Obviously, as we all know, Watson out for the year. The Ravens just keep rolling. After starting 0-2, they have won 5 straight and just look like a team on a mission. I made it clear in my NFC North record prediction video that I think the Ravens and then on the AFC side and then the Lions on the NFC side are the two hottest teams in the NFL in both conferences. And that if I were to pick a Super Bowl matchup, this week, it would be those two teams. And that would be the best game, the most competitive, and most, fun to watch, more than likely. But looking at this game, the Ravens, they don't have Marlon Humphrey for this game, but I don't think that's going to be much of a concern. Jameis Winston hasn't played in a while. I didn't research into when was the last time he played, but overall, they have a new play caller for the Browns. I'm assuming that they are just testing things out and they don't actually think they can salvage their season. Otherwise, they wouldn't have dished, Amari Cooper. And the Ravens, like I've said, they are hot as heck. They are not a team to really mess with right now. And the Browns, I don't think Nick Chubb can carry them through this. While I would want both teams to be playing at their best because Chubb versus Henry would be sick if both teams were playing to their talent level. The Browns without Cooper just don't have the talent. So I'm going with the Ravens to win this game. Moving on, we have the Titans and Lions. The Titans going to go visit Detroit. Obviously a rough year for them. They trade DeAndre Hopkins, so it's one less reliable weapon. And not to mention Will Levis is questionable with a right shoulder injury. And we all know how hard it is for these guys to play, even if it's kind of a mild lingering injury on their throwing arm. Obviously, like I just said, the Lions are a very, very, very hot team. So I'm going to take them in this game at home. I don't think it'll be very hard for them to, prevent the Titans from scoring a lot. And I think that they're going to be able to exploit the Titans' defense with their powerful running tandem. So Detroit wins this game. You've got the Colts who keep on managing to find ways to win, and I definitely think that stops this week. I think in a crazy, crazy world, you could maybe see Anthony Richardson somehow turning it up and winning this game, but I just don't see it. The Texans played, I wouldn't say a good offensive game last week, but they had a good run game which the Colts have struggled against this year. They do say Jonathan Taylor can play this weekend, but he's been having a lingering injury and he hasn't played in several weeks. So it's like is he going to look like the Jonathan Taylor we know? But he's going up against a Houston defense that isn't exactly a pushover. And they just lost a nail biter against Green Bay and Lambeau. So I think they can really secure a win at home and further solidify their division title that they are holding on to. And I don't imagine they're going to fall to the Colts and run the risk of really losing a lot of momentum with 2 straight losses. So I'm taking the Texans. Green Bay Packers visit Jacksonville to take on the Jaguars. Green Bay obviously winning a nail biter and shooting ourselves in the foot quite a bit against a Texans team that, if you look at the yardage, You wonder how they were even in it, and it was because of mistakes. Saw an interesting stat that since like 2000, teams with a -3 like turnover differential had only won like 89 games or something. And then it was like over 800 like losses and like 2 ties or something wild. Obviously, last week you really owe, the win to the Packers defense. Our defense obviously playing very, very well, limiting CJ Stroud. Yes, they didn't have Nico Collins. Yes, Mixon, definitely ran the football pretty well against us. Nothing like crazy bad, but it's like you wish you could have held him back a little bit more. But, the Packers win and off a field goal, which, many people would be like, oh, I wouldn't imagine us doing that before last week. Jacksonville beat the Patriots. Not much to say there other than the Patriots defense has not looked very good. And they made the Jaguars offense look a bit more alive. They didn't even have ETN. And Bigsby had a solid game, but the Patriots defense to me looked lost. So to me, it was kind of a gimme win for the Jaguars in the sense that, the Jaguars ran it for literally over a quarter straight to close the game. Trevor Lawrence, didn't play bad, but he didn't have to throw a lot. And it was ultimately kind of an easy win for them where they were just like, let's just keep running it. Now this week with ETN coming back, I don't know how much more effective they'll be. I feel like he takes away from Bigsby, who should be their starting back, and ETN the complement. Because ETN just doesn't show the wow factor to me. A lot of the time when it's like, this guy was supposed to be kind of a really good gadget player. And to me, he just doesn't do it enough to make me think that like, he's going to be a huge boost to their roster. And not only that, but the Packers defense just doesn't give up second half points. And I mean, if the Jaguars come off to a slow start, I think that, ultimately they're just not going to be able to score as much as the Packers, and the Packers are going to be able to take advantage of this Jaguars defense that has had kind of lack of effort at times this year. But yeah, I'm taking my Packers to win in Jacksonville. Arizona Cardinals and Miami Dolphins. Obviously, the Cardinals winning a game where they got some penalties that went their way at the end of the game, and they won by, a walk-off field goal, much like my Packers last week against the Chargers, where the Chargers had, many chances to close that game. But the Cardinals clearly showing that they're one of those feisty teams. So with that, I think the Cardinals can win. They don't have a lot of talent. They got obvious gaps. But the Dolphins do get Tua back this week. And on another funnier tidbit, the Kyler Murray Call of Duty stuff is going to be coming back because today Call of Duty came out. And Kyler has had a really bad record after every single Call of Duty. Maybe that type of, maybe it won't happen this year. Maybe he'll change, to where he's, he finds a balance type of thing. But overall, I think even if he does find a balance, I think that with Tua coming back, that's going to give the Dolphins the resurgence they need to really, have a dominant offense and really just outscore the Cardinals, even if their defense doesn't play well, which the Dolphins defense has been very suspect this year, much like last year. So I'm going to take the Dolphins. I think that they end this skid that they're on to try and keep, make people think that like, this is a team that can maybe make, a mid to late season push to maybe get a playoff spot. Because in their division, who knows if the Bills are going to keep playing consistently. And because they've been kind of off and on this year. And who knows if they're going to keep playing well with the addition of Amari Cooper. Looking at the next game, we have the Jets, much like the Dolphins, kind of a must-win game. You're 2-5 5 losses is already, kind of a lot in the AFC, and you're playing the Patriots. One of the teams that you have a win on already, and that was when Rodgers looked really sound. He looked like he was very calm. He looked like he was kind of unhindered that game, but he's dealing with, a lot of injuries. He's been getting hit a lot, and he's a 40-year-old man. Now, I think last week was kind of an attrition of a couple of just kind of like botched plays that ended up like in the worst case scenario where it's like Garrett Wilson hits off him for a pick and, other things. I do think that this is a team that's looking like they have a lot of talent, but they don't have an identity. And the only thing that I can say is that, feed Breece Hall. But they do need to make sure that they learn how to gel together with, Adams, Wilson, Mike Williams, since he's still on the team. Allen Lazard is doubtful to play, so I'm assuming it'll be Williams, Wilson, and Adams, will be the starting 3 potentially. You can plug either Adams or Wilson in the slot, obviously. And, we'll see if they can, come alive this game. Because I think that if the Jets lose this game, I mean, you can practically put a stake in them this season. I hate to say that as, I'm still kind of a Rodgers fan, and I think he's got plenty of talent, and he showed that, when they played the Bills a couple of weeks ago before trading for Davante. But the thing about it is that the way their defense has been playing and their defense has been skittish, I just wonder if Hassan Reddick finally coming to come play is really going to fix a lot. It will fix a lot if they can just generate, a lot of pressure, which they've been generating pressure a lot. But overall, I think this defense needs the pass rush help because their secondaries looked just suspect when that isn't what you would think would look suspect on a team like this, where their secondary is, a little banged up, but it's pretty stacked. And they have good guys. But I am going to take the Jets, but I just don't have much faith with how they've been playing. And I think that Drake May, regardless that he's lost both of his games, has put up points with an offense that isn't, anything crazy. Looking at the Falcons and the Buccaneers. Now, I would have said that the Buccaneers are going to win this game and get the revenge game that they need after having that kind of brutal loss to the Falcons earlier this year. But with Godwin out for the year and with Mike Evans out, they're essentially relying on, Bucky, Irving, and Baker as kind of the guys that are going to solidify this offense. And they're asking Baker to do a lot, without his 2 top wideouts. And I like Bowles, and I like his faith that these younger wide receivers can come in partially to their own and produce. But it's too many unknowns. And while the Falcons have been disappointing, and obviously, they can really take at a huge advantage with a win here over the Buccaneers and having, beat them in both matchups, prior to mid-season. They can obviously hold the tiebreaker, which would be huge. They'd have a 2-game advantage, essentially. I think that they win this game. They're not banged up. The chemistry thing's an issue, but overall, I think that, yeah, they're gonna win. I think that the Buccaneers defense is gonna obviously have to play a lot better than the last matchup, where they let Kirk pass for 500 yards. But yeah, I'm taking the Falcons, even though they're another team that I just don't really trust. It's like a bunch of good players, kind of like the Jets, that are not performing week in and week out. Philadelphia Eagles playing the Bengals. Obviously, the Bengals a team that started off rough. They nearly beat, the undefeated Chiefs, early in the season when it was like, oh yeah, this team just doesn't play in September. And then they're playing the Eagles, an Eagles team that, yeah, they get everybody back, but they barely beat the Browns. And then last week, Saquon clobbers his former team. Jalen Hurts didn't do much. And the offensive scheme, as far as I'm concerned, for the Eagles, their scheme is to feed Saquon. And as long as he's healthy, I think it's a good strategy. But you really need Jalen Hurts to actually perform. The guy is, getting paid too much, in my opinion, with too many weapons to be performing as mediocre as he is. And it just hasn't been there for the Eagles this year, besides Saquon. Who knew that they were going to sign Saquon to be their savior? Don't get me wrong, he's a good guy for that. He's always going to run hard. He's going to play hard. And he's, still got like all the talent, that he had coming out of college. He's fast, strong, and, can do just about everything. But, barring an injury to him or whatever, this team could get derailed really, really quick. And I think, the Bengals, I think their defense, has been kind of lackluster and stagnant, but they did a little bit better against the run when the guys came back. And I think that this defense just needs, to get a little momentum. And I think, the Bengals, to me, they've had a good defense and they can perform. And I'm going to take the Bengals for this game. I think the Eagles are just, I don't know, they're rough around the edges for whatever reason. And I think now that we're in late October and we're almost in November, I think that the offense for the Bengals is just really going to click and they're going to start to really take advantage. And it's like the Eagles, I mean, they just, they haven't lived up to the standard that I think people had for them at the early, before the season started. And they've just looked rough and just like not like a really good team. So yeah, I'm taking the Bengals in this game. Maybe it's an upset, but I'm taking the Bengals. Moving on, we have the New Orleans Saints going to play the Chargers at SoFi. Now, the Chargers obviously had a disappointing loss, to say the least, against the Cardinals, where it's like, they didn't score a lot of points. The defense didn't close out the game, essentially, off of, you can say it's a spotty call, but it was still called. And, your offense couldn't really score. The Saints, as we know, in their last game was, last week, Thursday, and they essentially got clobbered by the Broncos. They made the Broncos look really good offensively. And while the Chargers, you could argue that they may have less talent at wide receiver than the Broncos potentially, because a lot of their guys are still kind of unproven. Ladd McConkey, I think, is good. Quinn Johnston, is performing better this year after having kind of a lackluster first year, but is still, vastly unproven. The thing that I'll say is that if the Saints can get, carved up by Bo Nix, who's a rookie, and while he's an accurate and a pretty solid rookie performing with, minimal weaponry, if you will, I think that Herbert is obviously better, has been in the league, and I think that he can really carve them up. The other thing, too, is that Joey Bosa, they say, will be in a limited role, where I'm assuming that they'll use him in pass rush scenarios. And Khalil Mack has been having, a quietly good season. I think he's one of the reasons for this defense, being a bit better, is that Khalil Mack is, being very disruptive. And the Saints haven't been the best at protection. Rattler can obviously scramble, but I think the Chargers defense is going to be able to handle Rattler Even though he did some good things last week, and I think they're going to be able to put the pressure on them probably better than even the Broncos did, which is going to make it hard for them. So I'm taking the Chargers in this game to win at home. Buffalo Bills visit the Seattle Seahawks. Now, the Seahawks, they won last week. Thankfully, Metcalf isn't injured for as long as some of these other players that had, knee injuries, or injuries, last week or even last night. He's questionable. But you do have Kenneth Walker healthy, which is huge. I think that despite not being able to run the football too well type of thing, Kenneth Walker's just kind of a guy that he's had some, he also had that receiving touchdown. And I think that, they should honestly use him more that way. They just haven't been able to run it well with him. But I'm like, use his speed, his mismatch capability more. And, your offense can, use him as somewhat of a decoy to get JSN or even Lockett, who's, always been reliable and a smart player. And I think that you can exploit the Bills. Now, obviously, the Bills, to me, shaky defense this year. Not as good as it once was, I guess. It's kind of off and on. The Seahawks have a lot of talent on the offensive side of the ball. They obviously have to protect Geno Smith, but there's a reason that I think he still leads the league in, passing yards. And I think that the Bills, offensively, obviously Amari Cooper kind of got going last week, and they traded for him so that they could have, a proven veteran guy to be the number one, at least until some of their younger weapons develop, nicely so they can be the top target. But I think the Bills, I think this is obviously a game that it's like not a must win for them. But you look at even the Seahawks and it's like they would, they'd obviously want to win here, but they can obviously draw away from the Niners. And the more games they can put ahead of themselves, put themselves in the front of their division, the better, because I think, with the Rams looking the way they did against the Vikings, I think they're a serious threat to maybe come back and make a late season run because they have a really good quarterback, solid weapons when healthy, and even a good run game. So offensively they're very sound, and they've shown a bit more consistency than the Seahawks, who haven't had, their offense hasn't had a ton of injuries besides Kenneth Walker early for a few games. But they've just stuttered and they can't fully tap into their offense for whatever reason. But with that being said, I'm going to take the Bills. I think the Seahawks are going to have a problem with, Josh Allen and the run game, which they've also struggled with, and I think that, James Cook and Ray Allen, I think that, they can do really well this game. And it'll set them apart from the Seahawks, unless the Seahawks can develop a game plan that gets them down the field consistently, which they haven't done, and DK might not be full strength for this game. Bears Commanders. Bears Commanders is a game that before the season started, people kind of looked at and they were like, oh, if Jaden Daniels pans out type of thing, maybe. But then as the season went on, oh my goodness, this is looking like it's going to be a great game. Because obviously the Bears are coming off a bye. They are fourth in the NFC North, but the NFC North has proven to be the toughest division. And now Jaden Daniels unfortunately has a rib injury and he's a game time decision. What I will say is that it's not like Mariota can't play, but he's the kind of guy that the way he plays, he's liable to force, have turnovers. And I mean, he's definitely not a guy that it's like you can, take lightheartedly. And I definitely don't expect the Bears to do that because to be honest, they rely on their defense. I think, Caleb Williams has gotten better each week, but he's played some mediocre talent, to be honest with you. It's like their last, 2 wins were Panthers and then the Jaguars, and then last week they had off. They are coming off a bye. Who knows if that'll kind of like reset their momentum offensively, which would, be bad for Caleb, obviously, but they have plenty of weapons. But the Commanders, even with kind of a lackluster talent margin on the side of the defense, they are playing sound football, and it's not like they're giving up a ton of mistakes, and they're being competitive. And I think, I definitely think it's, because their coach, being a hard-nosed guy has changed the culture there. And while it might not be the Commanders' year, even though they look like they're going to win their division because it's been so rough for the other teams, I think that they don't win this game, and it's one of those games that they're going to kind of look back on, and they're like, oh, if Jayden Daniels had been fully healthy, or if he does play, is he going to be able to play well enough to do well against a Bears defense that is opportunistic? Because of that, I am going Bears. I just, if Marcus Mariota comes in and beats the Bears, like that's going to be really bad. Especially considering that they kind of knew that, oh, there's a potential that we play this guy. It's not like Jayden got injured in the middle of the week. They knew he had the injury after last Sunday going into, Tuesday practices. So I'm going with the Bears as much as I would like the Commanders to win. Moving on, we have the Panthers visiting the Broncos at Mile High. The Panthers obviously have let up quite a bit of points this year. They have not looked good. The offense, I think they only had like that one game with Andy Dalton where they were like, oh, score at will. And, Andy Dalton's not playing because he has the injury, so we're likely to see Bryce Young. And the Broncos, have been playing a very solid this year. Despite not having a lot of offensive talent and a rookie QB, I think Bo Nix has done well. He's definitely had mistakes, but he definitely, is a player that he's determined to kind of, build each week. And he even challenged Sean Payton, which seems to be working, and to each his own. And Sean Payton likes it. I think he wants his quarterback to be fiery. I think he wants him to be competitive, and I think he wants him to push, to kind of use it as kind of a teaching lesson. But I definitely expect the Broncos to win this game. Not much to talk about. I think that they're just the better team than the Panthers, who their defense just hasn't, really done that well. And I think after last week, the Broncos are riding a good amount of momentum with especially Alon, a few days rest going into when they practice. We have the Kansas City Chiefs playing their division rival, the Raiders. Not much to really say about this. It's like I say every week, I think unless Max Crosby can somehow pull like a Chris Jones or some sort of effect where he's getting to Mahomes, forcing him to make mistakes, which is hard, or stripping the football of him, I just don't see the Raiders winning. They just don't have the talent margin. The Chiefs obviously won the last time they were in this stadium was when they won the Super Bowl. Quite a way to really rub it into your division rival when you're like, oh yeah, we won a Super Bowl in your stadium. So I feel like it's kind of one of those things that it's going to be like, they're going to remember, the players on the, that were in the Super Bowl last year are going to remember, that, oh yeah, this plays such good moments, and it's going to give them good energy. Which, for the Chiefs, who are a banged up team, not that they need the energy, but they traded for D-Hop, and I think that D-Hop is going to be good in the sense that they don't need to pass it deep downfield to him, even though I think he still kind of has a good jump ball with those strong hands, even though he's not the speediest guy anymore. But I think they're going to use him a lot, to create mismatches. And utilizes Mahomes, quick accuracy to him so that they can chip in chunk yards. I think they essentially went and got him because they know that, oh, this guy is still, he doesn't drop passes really. So it's like, I'm going to take the Chiefs over the Raiders. And I just think that, the Raiders, there's no way that their offensive performs against, the level of defense that the Chiefs have. Moving on to Sunday night, we have the Cowboys visiting the Niners. The Niners, obviously, Ayuk out for the year. Debo has stated that he's going to have to lay it all on the line to start, doing really well and start, carrying this team, essentially. Obviously, you have, the rookie that had suffered the bullet wound. Excuse me for not remembering his name, but he's been Ricky Pearsall. It just came to me. And I think that, they're going to need to develop him, which I'm sure they will. This is a great offensive mind in Shanahan. And I think that, Shanahan is dealing with another one of these years where they're incredibly banged up. It reminds me of 3 years ago when literally their whole team was hurt. I don't think Purdy was on the team, or maybe it wasn't 3 years ago. Maybe it was 4 or 5. But they literally had everybody hurt on this team. And it was just too much for, Shanahan to overcome. But it'd be almost impossible for any, coach to overcome. And I think, you look at Purdy and he just, some of these decisions, I get last week it was against the Chiefs, but some of it is just, I'm like, what are you doing? And it's one of those wild things that people were like, oh, he's going to get paid so much money. But it's like, if you look bad and it's because you have a lack of talent on the team, I think that, this season could prove that they could save a lot by not have to pay Purdy how much people think he's going to get paid. And it's like the Cowboys, I'll say this, for looking as bad as they've been, the fact that they have 3 wins means that they still have a shot. You have the Commanders, like I said, who are likely to lose a game. You have the Eagles, who it's could lose. You get a win tonight in San Fran, and you play a kind of a beat-up team. And barring that Dak is on his back, most of the game by Nick Bosa, I think that him and CD are set to have a big game. I think this is a very crazy, tough game to predict. I would have taken the Niners if they were, full strength, obviously, but they are incredibly banged up. And I am going to take the Niners just because, the Cowboys have looked crazy bad this year. And the Niners, to me, I just think that the fact that they have a run game and that the Cowboys don't is what's going to set them apart in this game. So I'm going to take the Niners in Sunday Night Football. And that's it for my predictions. So if you guys have any comments, thoughts about the games on Sunday, or, anything to do with the NFL, I would, feel free to comment on it. Leave a like and subscribe. I know this video is coming out kind of later on, Friday, but, I would appreciate your input so we can, maybe have a discussion, on Saturday about it before the games take place. But as always, go Pack Go. This is CastCast.